Clash Royale just dropped what is perhaps the worst update of all time, and players are not happy.
Heroes are here in Clash Royale.
Oh my god!
I've come to realize that the hero mini pekka is so fucking broken that you should almost always go for an ability.
Just last week, I posted this video about how the Evo card meta was a pay-to-win mess that has tormented most of the community for the last 2 years. But that update is nothing compared to the absolute insanity that these hero cards are going to cause.
No, you're so sneaky! You're so sneaky! No!
Let's go! Oh my gosh! Level 23! Already! It does so much damage! Freeze this! 3 crown! It's got 3 crown!
So today, I'm gonna give you the entire update on the chaos that is level 16 and hero cards. Supercell has now made it a trend that whenever they announce a new card level, they also decide to add a new concept into the game entirely. Level 14 came with champion cards, level 15 came with Evos, and now level 16 has come with perhaps the worst of all three, the heroic cards. Now, before I talk about the heroes, I want to touch on level 16 by itself, because I actually think as far as new card levels go, this might be the best that Supercell has done so far. Now, when I say the best so far, keep in mind that means it's better than the past, and the standard is literally on the floor. I know for many of you that haven't maxed out your decks already, seeing a new level being added comes with a huge frustration, knowing that you're just that much further from having a maxed out deck. And on top of that, people like me with maxed out decks now don't have maxed out decks, and we have to go back to the drawing board. Or, in my case, to my credit card. Anyways, this is a never-ending problem with a game like Clash Royale, because every time there's a new card level, people get upset, but at the end of the day, if everybody with a maxed out account got bored of playing and stopped playing the game, that would be even worse than us having to level up higher. So it's sort of an endless cycle that will make nobody happy, that just has to be a part of the game. In the past, the new levels would just feel like another typical cash grab from Supercell, and they would claim their reasoning for adding it was to give players more progression to work towards, but this might be the first time they actually somewhat stuck by their words. This new level came with a ton of changes to the old system, so let's go over them now. To start off, the elite wildcards have been completely removed, and to be honest, that was a slap in the face to a lot of players who make in-app purchases. Many people paid real-life money to buy these elite cards, but luckily Supercell did make sure to give us gems in return for all of our unused wild cards at the time of the update. Now, whether you think it was a fair conversion, that's up to you to decide. For free-to-play players, however, the huge boost in gems is probably super nice, considering that there isn't really many ways to earn large amounts of gems in one sitting. But if you spent money on these, like I said, you might have gotten less gems than the true monetary value that you spent on these cards. So it was a pretty bad deal for idiots like me who can't stop swiping your card at the Supercell store. Now, with the elite wildcards being gone, Supercell also decided to remove all of the magic books from the game. And for those of you that don't remember, these magic books basically made you skip a level and fill in all the cards that you would have needed. They probably removed this because they now think it would be too easy to upgrade all the way to level 16 if they were still in the game, considering they took out the wild cards. And if it's too easy to upgrade your cards, then you guessed it, Supercell can't convince you to grab your mommy's hard-earned money and spend it on their virtual cards. However, just like they did with the elite wild cards, they did compensate players who lost their books by giving them the amount of cards it would have taken to upgrade from level 13 to 14 in the past update, meaning that common books gave you 7,500 wild cards, every rare book gave you 1,400, epic books gave you 180, and legendary books would give you 20 wild cards. And yes, there still is a cap on how many wild cards you can have on each rarity in your account, but any cards you got from the conversions would go above the cap, resulting in some people's accounts looking a little bit crazy like this. It seems like the reason Supercell made this decision is that elite wildcards aren't exactly a great long-term solution if they plan on adding a new level every year or every couple years for as long as possible. And for me, this actually kind of felt like good news in general for a couple of reasons. One being that if Supercell is planning to add more levels into the future, it means that they're definitely gearing up to keep the game interesting for at least another decade or even longer. So now the thousands of dollars I spent maxing out my deck are totally worth it because I can remain addicted to the game until I'm old enough to have kids and give them my account, which means that it's really an investment, right? right? And if you guys are like me and you still lose after spending a ton of money on the game, then the sponsor of this video, tapin.gg, is for you. Whether you're looking to take on the 2v2 trophy road with high-skilled teammates or get a live coach to help carry you through your solo trophy road, tapin.gg has the best coaches and teammates in the entire world. So if you guys are tired of losing, you can head on over to tapin.gg and use my promo code CLASHCORE, or just click the link in my description. Thank you, tapin.gg, and let's get back into the video. Anyways, along with all of these changes, they did also add the ability to buy card upgrades with gems. Basically, if you go to a card that you haven't maxed out yet, you will see an option to upgrade with gems, which gives you the amount of cards required to upgrade to the next level. And yes, if you haven't put it together already, this is literally exactly how the magic books used to work before, but now instead of finding them for free in your lightning chests, you just have to buy gems, which is, you know, classic Supercell. And as much of a mess as this new card level seems to be, it's probably had the least backlash out of any new card level in the past decade. And I'd say that's mostly because Supercell has reduced the amount of cards required to upgrade per level, meaning that to upgrade all the way to level 15 is quite a bit easier than it was before. However, now you're gonna have to fight against level 21 mini pekkas, destroying your tower in 2 hits, but we'll get back to those hero cards in just a second. Another true positive of this update that I wanted to bring up, because I'm trying to be unbiased, is the announcement of the new resource called crystals. Essentially, every time you get a card in a chest that you've already maxed out, it will now convert to crystals instead of the elite wild cards that we used to get. And with these crystals, you're not going to be able to upgrade cards or get anything that makes your deck better, but you are going to be able to look cool because you can use these crystals to buy emotes and cosmetics in an exclusive shop. And the exclusive shop that just takes crystals actually feels like a nice touch, because instead of spending cash on emotes and stuff like that, it might feel better to kind of earn some of these cosmetics. And I hope it actually replaces the current card cosmetic system as well, which is star levels, which, to be honest, I really don't even understand, and they're pretty lame. What would be a super awesome thing to see in the future would be some skins for our cards that wouldn't be stuck behind a paywall, and that seems like the crystals might be the solution to that. And speaking of paywalls, let's talk about what you guys all came here to talk about: hero cards. Hero cards, just like evolution cards, are a completely new version of different cards and characters. Essentially, these new versions of cards are kind of like mixes of evolutions and champions. Similar to Evo, they're versions of cards that are already in the game, but they work like champions in that they all have a unique ability that doesn't require you to cycle the normal version to get to them. With there now being 2 different types of cards that have abilities, Supercell has also made it so that you can have up to 2 champions or heroes per deck instead of just 1. So get ready to see some absolutely insane combinations in the future. Just like when they released Evos, the heroes have also launched with 4 starting cards, which are the Musketeer, the Knight, the Giant, and the Mini Pekka, which everybody actually received if they bought the Pass Royale. To be 100% honest, this sounds like a cool and unique concept on paper. I mean, who doesn't like new gameplay features? But that's only until you realize they are completely broken. But before you guys get all stressed out, I'm going to go over how each one of these cards work, ranking them from the worst to the best, and I'm also going to give you guys tips and tricks for how you can use them in decks to be the most effective and hopefully not get bullied by everybody else using them. Starting off with the worst of the 4, the Giant. Now, even calling this card the worst in any sense feels absolutely ridiculous, because this card has the ability to toss cards from one lane all the way to the other. The Hero Giant has a small circle around him that if any troop is inside, you can use a 2 elixir ability that sends your opponents flying across the map into the other lane, basically completely removing it from being able to defend your push and also stunning it for 2 seconds. Now, this makes it so that basically any ground tank against the Giant is completely useless. So you have to counter this card with buildings, ranged cards, or things that can fly. I mean, just imagine how insane it is that you can place this card straight into a literal pekka and you'll just remove it from you and send it to the other side of the board for only 2 elixir. Now, with that being said, I think the reason I have it as the weakest card on my list is because despite the ability being so broken, there are still a lot of counters for it, and you won't be able to just slap this card into any deck and have it work. That being said, as I talked about earlier, there's 2 champions slash heroes per deck now, so if you're already using a regular Giant in your main deck, there's no reason not to slap this version in and just have it be more useful. And although the regular Giant card itself hasn't been very common in the meta recently, I think with this upgraded card, you're going to see the return of one of the decks that used to terrorize us up and down the ladder, that being Giant Graveyard. Similarly to the Giant, the Graveyard also hasn't been very popular in the meta. However, for people that do use it, there are better versions of the deck that don't use the Giant in recent times. Plus, the biggest problem is that the Giant plus Graveyard already costs 10 elixir, so if your opponent has a strong ground unit like the Mini Pekka, Monk, or Mighty Miner, you don't really have a good response since you already used your entire elixir bar. But now that problem has basically vanished because Mini Pekka, Monk, and Mighty Miner are going to literally get set flying across the arena for 2 elixir the second you place them near the Giant, meaning the Graveyard isn't going to be targeted by the tower for an extremely long time. So now the only way to really counter this Giant is going to be using swarm units, as he can only throw 1 troop across the map per ability. But with most Graveyard decks, people are also using arrows, so good luck downing the Giant before your entire swarms are spelled away for only 3 elixir. Despite this card having a super unique and useful ability, the reason I rated him lower than the other 3 cards is that I still don't think the Giant is a very good card in general during the current meta, especially considering that this new ability has a pretty small range. Getting off abilities that are actually valuable are going to be a struggle because as soon as players learn how to counter him better, he can't really do much against the ranged cards or buildings. He might pair well with some cards like Tornado, as he can launch ranged cards if you Tornado into them, but between the 2 elixir for the ability and the 3 elixir for the Tornado, it would cost 5 elixir just to launch something, so I can't imagine that's going to end up being a very good strategy. That being said, the last thing I'll say about this card is that there is a case that it could be used for defense, as there's not really much your opponent can do to get damage on the tower if you have the Giant defending it. I mean, imagine your tower's low HP and they send down their Hog Rider to finish it off, and you just place your Giant on top of it and send the Hog Rider over to the other tower that has more HP, or to your King Tower, so you can create a huge push behind your Giant. So even though I don't think it's what people are thinking right now, I think there's a world where this card will get more value on defense than on offense once players learn how to use him correctly. And speaking of a card who usually gets more defensive than offensive, we have to talk about our next card on the list, the Mini Pekka. The Mini Pekka has had the spotlight on it so far for this release because everyone is able to obtain him by buying this season's battle pass. Unlike the Giant though, the Mini Pekka ability is slightly more complicated. Basically, he has a bar above his head that slowly fills up over time and fills up faster every time he hits an enemy troop or tower. The bar has 4 phases, meaning that each time you fill the bar, it becomes a lighter shade until finally you complete the full yellow bar, which then can give him 5 more levels. Yes, you heard that right. For just 1 elixir, you can use a Mini Pekka that is level 21. On top of that, you don't even need to wait for all 5 bars to finish or worry about your Mini Pekka getting destroyed before them, because you can just level it up by 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 based on how quickly you want to use the ability. So you can get to a level 18 or 19 Mini Pekka by the time it's on the opponent's tower. Now, this sounds pretty broken, especially for 1 elixir, but it gets worse, because in addition to leveling up, when you click the ability, he also gets 50% healing, meaning that even if they have your heroic Mini Pekka at 1 HP, when you press the ability and make him a level 21, he also gets a portion of his health back, turning him into a literal 1-shot machine on pretty much any card, and a 2-shot machine on your tower. Mini Pekka was already one of the best cards in the game for defense, but now he has infinite more value when he defends, because as he's eliminating cards on defense, he's also upgrading his bar, so that way when you click his ability and he's on offense, he's literally unstoppable. Like I said, if this card ever reaches your tower while upgraded, you might as well close the app because it will genuinely 2-shot it. In terms of what decks you can use this card in, it's kind of anything. Pretty much every deck in the game uses some sort of ground tank, and this card is so good it can fit in pretty much all of them. And like I said, there are still 2 more cards that I think are better than this, so wait till you hear what those are all about. The absolute best deck for this card though, in my opinion, would be this bridge spam deck right here. Bridge spam has always been a deck focused on trying to get all of your opponent's ground tanks out by placing stuff at the bridge or counter pushing, and the heroic Mini Pekka fits that extremely well. Not only is it a good cheap defense, taking out any of their ground units easily, but it also gives the rest of your cards like Battle Ram, Golden Knight, and Royal Ghost a ton of value since your opponent will be out of responses. Not to mention that this whole time your mini Pekka is fighting at the bridge, it's gaining its bar levels, which is going to only make it stronger. Another good deck to put this in would be the Hog Firecracker. Hog Firecracker practically always needs a good ground tank with high DPS, as it can be pretty weak against tanky units like Bowler, E-Giant, and Mega Knight. This is why for the past couple of years, Mighty Miner has been the ground tank of choice for many Hog Firecracker players, as it has a high DPS. The only problem, as many of you guys know, is that Mighty Miner can be reset by any zap card, making those matchups extremely difficult. Heroic Mini Pekka, however, solves all of those problems and becomes the ultimate defense card for this deck. You still want to be using the Hog Rider and Firecracker for offense and letting the Mini Pekka do defense, but it should be much harder for opponents to break through with this card, and then when Mini Pekka does break through and has his levels upgraded, just say goodbye to the other team. The main drawback for this card is that it's still the Mini Pekka, so it's going to be extremely weak against swarm units and also against kiting across the map, so any good player won't give you as much value for it on offense, and using the ability at times might not even be worth it. Still, the card is extremely strong, and it's always going to be good on defense, but it's not as strong as our next card, the Heroic Musketeer. The Musketeer has been a staple of this game since the initial release, so it's no surprise to see her get a heroic card despite already having an Evo. Unlike the Mini Pekka, her ability is quite simple. You spend 3 elixir and she spawns in a literal turret on the map. Yeah, I'm not really sure what Supercell was cooking with this one because this turret is ridiculous. Its DPS is more than any other building in the game, it does spawn in damage, and for some reason it even shoots the air. And since the ability places the turret in front of her, you can literally get this thing onto the tower, doing thousands of damage if not defended. Her ability also comes with some unique interactions, as this is the first time in the game's history that we can actually place a building behind our king tower. Yeah, I know that sounds useless, but clearly Supercell didn't playtest this card very well, because if you haven't already seen it, there's a bug that makes the Evo Skarmy practically unkillable. And if you're wondering, yes, this has not been patched yet, so people are farming free trophies, which you should absolutely not do because it's a loser thing to participate in, but I'm sure many people will do it anyway. Now, in terms of what decks she's going to be really strong in, there is one obvious one that stands out more than the rest: Hog 2.6. This deck, which is obviously already despised, has just gotten a massive upgrade because of this card. Since this deck already doesn't use any champions, and you're not even forced to pop the ability with the hero cards, adding the Hero Musketeer to Hog 2.6 is a no-brainer. The defensive ability on this deck is already beyond stupid. I mean, you can literally cycle infinite cannons, skeletons, and ice spirits, but even if you manage to break through all of that, good luck with the Musketeer's military-grade turret. And if you do have morals and refuse to touch Hog 2.6 like I do, then the Miner Balloon deck might be more your style. It can be quite a tricky deck to play if you aren't high-skilled, but the Hero Musketeer gives it a ton more value. With this deck, the Musketeer can be used a lot more for offense, as the Miner Balloon is a pretty tedious push for your opponent to deal with, but really doesn't cost that much elixir. This means that you can also put your Musketeer behind the balloon while your Miner tanks, and the tower is going to get melted. However, you should be careful using this deck though, because it can be pretty weak against ground tanks, so sometimes you should actually use your Miner on defense in this situation. You also should make sure that you have good placements with your Ice Golems, Skeletons, and Bar Barrels, because if you don't, you will run out of cheap ways to defend quickly and get overwhelmed. Hence why I said this is more of a high skill deck. This card does come with some downsides though, and for me the main one would be spell value. If you're spending elixir on the Musketeer ability and then your opponent has a fireball or rocket, they could use it against not only the turret but also your tower at the same time, giving them a ton of value, meaning that in some games it might just be really hard to find a time to use it. And the ability being 3 elixir is definitely not cheap, so the longer the game goes on, the easier it is to pop the ability, but in single elixir, it could be extremely risky and lead you to instantly losing a game if you're not careful. And this is just my personal opinion, not really anything to do with how good the card is, but honestly, I find her ability to be the most boring. I mean, yeah, in a way, I guess it's unique, but it's just an overpowered turret for 3 elixir, and that's kind of it. However, this final card has definitely the coolest ability, I think, in the entire game. We're talking about the new best card, the Hero Knight. This card might genuinely be one of the most broken cards we have ever seen on its release. Essentially, for your 1 elixir, the Knight creates this giant radius. Any card that is inside this radius when you activate it essentially will only attack the Knight until it's dead. And there's actually almost nothing you can do against this, because how can you even defend something if your troops won't shoot it? The worst part is that it isn't just troops. His ability can also retarget buildings like the Inferno Tower or Tesla, making them pretty useless. And I'm only talking about offense right now, but this card is also just as strong, if not stronger, on defense, as it can bait all of your opponent's troops towards you, while your support cards like Wizard, Witch, or Bomber gain a ridiculous amount of value. If your opponent doesn't have a win condition that only targets buildings, you literally cannot get damage on this card. Usually in the past, the Knight and the Evo Knight have been a card for cycle players to use. It was a cheap ground take that does good DPS, and the Evo does a really good job of tanking for your push. However, the Hero Knight is completely different. Although this card could literally be used in any deck, we're going to mainly see it used in beatdown decks like this Golem deck, for example. The reason for it being so useful in decks like this is pretty simple. You want to place him behind your Golem with your Evo Witch, Baby Dragon, or Mini Pekka in support, and then when your opponent uses everything he can to desperately defend your Golem, you pop your 2 elixir ability, and all of your opponent's troops walk straight to the Knight and get melted by the Witch, Baby Dragon, or Mini Pekka. If you can get a single push like that, the game is literally over. There is nothing your opponent can do but get 3 crown and then go to the shop and buy the card for themselves so they can inflict that same pain onto others. To be honest, I think it's kind of a shame that this card is being released as strong as it is, because the ability is actually super unique and fun, and with time, players are going to find creative and interesting ways to use it and to counter it. But unfortunately, with the massive radius of the ability, the crazy amount of extra HP, and the fact that it literally only costs 1 elixir, I don't see this being balanced anytime soon. And to be honest, I can't even really think of a downside for this card. The worst I can think of is in some matchups, maybe his ability isn't super strong on defense, but at that point, he's still just a regular Knight with more health that can tank, which is already a super strong card in the meta. With all that being said, I know Supercell will eventually nerf these cards to make them more balanced and more enjoyable to use or go against, but unfortunately, the Supercell pattern has shown us that they're not going to do this until people have spent their entire bank accounts buying the cards. It's super frustrating that every time we get a cool new in-game concept, it has to come at the cost of you being at a massive disadvantage if you don't spend money on them. I genuinely really do hope Supercell continues to create new concepts and ideas, and specifically things like these hero cards that add new abilities to the game. But I do hope that they take some of these healthy criticisms from the community, and eventually Supercell will move on from releasing things that are super broken at the beginning for a quick profit, which will probably do more harm than good to the community in the long term. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed, make sure to hit that like button and the subscribe button, and I will see you in the next video. Peace!